Thank you for joining me. My name is Emily and I work with the LEAF program. That's our youth program here at Common Good City Farm. And today is our first LEAF virtual Instagram edition. We are going to be doing these every Sunday at 4:30. So we hope you can keep joining us to learn along with us about things that are growing at the farm. Some garden science, some nutrition, some kids cooking recipes. We'll be doing all sorts of things over the next weeks. So we hope you can join us Sundays at 4:30. Today, though, we are going to talk about the Paw Paw, which is a pretty special fruit and a fruit that some people have never even heard of. So we're gonna really explore that from the very basics in case you yourself are not familiar with the Paw Paw fruit. So what is it? The Paw Paw, I've got one right here. This is a very small one. The Paw Paw is a fruit that is tropical in flavor and in family. It is about the size of a small mango usually, so this is a little more of a normal size. And they are of a green outside skin and a yellow inside skin with a dark brown, pretty large seed. So the inside, when it's ripe, is very soft and pulpy. So it's a very yellow pulp is what I would call it. The trees themselves, which I'm standing right in front of a Paw Paw tree here at Common Good, they stay fairly small, but the fruit can get up to 6 inches, which makes it the largest edible fruit that's native to the eastern United States. And you can see right behind me we've got some Paw Paws growing right here. Just try to make sure you can see it. And some fruit growing over here as well. So there are a lot of Paw Paws here on the tree. They can be found in the wild in this area, in the District, Maryland, Virginia area, especially West Virginia. And they are actually native to 26 states, mainly Mid-Atlantic and Midwest. Although some parts of the world use the term Paw Paw, the name Paw Paw, to refer to the papaya, it is actually a completely unrelated different fruit. So what we're talking about today is just our Paw Paw from North America, not the tropical papaya. But the fruit does taste tropical, and it's part of a tropical fruit family called the custard apple. So the custard apple family, most of them grow in the southern hemisphere or in southern climates with much warmer temperatures. So this is the most northern member of the custard apple family. That's why it's kind of exciting for so many, because it's so different from what you would typically find in this area, growing in this area. So it's kind of that fun difference that makes it so special. The fruit tastes tropical. It is very much a tropical fruit. And it has a flavor that I've heard many people describe as a mixture between banana and mango, a little bit of citrus, maybe some flowery aftertaste, maybe yeasty, and some people even say it's a bit of a bitter aftertaste, which they may or may not like. So I do say that this is a fruit that some people really love and some people really hate. Sometimes that bitter taste or that sort of funky texture is not what everyone wants to eat, but I found that a lot of people, when they try it, they really love it and get really into it and are like, where can I find a Paw Paw? So they ripen in late summer, like now, end of August, into the early fall. So right here on this tree, we have lots of fruit that are still on their way to ripening, but we had a couple ripe, so I was able to, like I said, harvest one to show you what a ripe interior looks like. And here's another one that's even a little bit of a darker yellow color. We'll continue to look at these Paw Paws that I have in front of me. You can see that the custardy flesh is super soft. It would actually even be really hard for you to chop that up with a knife, it's that soft. I'll show you because we'll just actually scoop it with a spoon, and it just scoops right off, and it's just this really soft, tropical flavored, gets kind of stuck on the seeds. So if I was eating this fresh, I would actually scoop the seeds right into my mouth and eat it like a watermelon. You don't eat the seeds, you would spit them out, but you can get all of the delicious fruit off by actually putting the whole thing in your mouth. And then once you spit your seed out, you've got this nice dark brown seed. You can kind of see how large it is and how it's kind of a shiny wooden brown color. So I personally like Paw Paws fresh right off the tree, just eaten as a fruit, like the way you just eat an apple. But you can definitely also make projects with them, like in a couple weeks when all the pawpaws ripen, we might want to do something besides just sit here eating pawpaws. So things that we've done here on the farm are make smoothies, make homemade ice cream, but it would also be really good if you just put fresh pawpaw on top of vanilla ice cream. We've also made pies, and some people make jams and things. One thing I would warn you is that some people have a little sensitivity to some of the compounds in the pawpaw, so the first time you eat them, you probably don't want to eat a whole bucket full, or even, maybe just start with one. And sometimes that can be factored in on whether it was baked or cooked. So you want to just make sure that you're eating them in moderation. They're healthy and good for you, but some people just have a little stomach upset. But definitely not everybody, so you might be just fine. But I would warn that you don't want to eat a pawpaw fruit that is not ripe. So I also did actually cut one open, nice size, but still really hard. A soft ripe pawpaw is about the same texture as a ripe peach or a ripe avocado. And this one is still pretty hard and firm. And you can see inside that it's not at all yellow. You can see the seeds sticking out, and it's nice view of the seed shape, but it's really hard and white. You do not want to cook with that or eat that, because that will definitely upset your stomach. Pawpaws are good for you. They have lots of good vitamins, minerals, and amino acids to keep you healthy. Particularly, they're high in vitamin C, riboflavin, and niacin, also potassium and calcium. All right, so I also want to go back to that question of why you may not have seen a pawpaw before, or why aren't they in the stores? And the reason for that is that they are very perishable, which means they go bad quickly, and very fragile, which means pretty easy to bruise the skin or tear the skin and have it sort of start to go bad even faster. Another reason is that, like I was saying, they feel like a ripe avocado or a ripe peach when they are ready to pick, which means you actually have to go by hand and give them a very gentle squeeze to find a ripe pawpaw. And so that means that you're actually doing a lot by hand. So it's hard to do that on a really large scale, because a pawpaw tree, they all ripen at different times. So that's a lot of different times that you have to go check and give them very gentle squeezes to see which ones are the best to harvest. A really ripe pawpaw will also fall to the ground, and those are okay to eat as long as you know you're picking it up pretty soon after it fell. But you'll be able to tell once you've known pawpaws a little bit, like if it's a little bit rotten or if it's still nice and fresh. Also, because the seeds, as I was showing, are kind of stuck inside all this flesh, if you were going to try to, take a lot of pawpaw fruit to turn it into your smoothie or your ice cream, it is a lot of work, which is pretty fun for a home project, but it's another reason why you don't often find it in the store or in big commercial products. Although not too many people do it, there is like a big plant that processes pawpaws in Ohio, and they, even though the pawpaw season is short, they are able to process it into purees that they freeze, so they do sell those and other items like jams year-round. So if you're really looking to try pawpaw and it's not the right time of year, you might want to look them up. The pawpaw plant has a long history. It was used by indigenous people, not only for food, for this delicious tropical fruit, but the bark of the tree is actually really good for making ropes and strings and different types of cords. And then these seeds have some medicinal properties. So people would grind them up and use them for different medicines. They have a natural insecticide. So the one that I've heard about that is people still use it for, even in commercial products to this day, is that because of the natural insecticide, it's a good ingredient in a head lice shampoo. So I thought that was kind of interesting. A very natural product, but it does work. Once you know what the tree looks like, what the fruit look like, and you're more familiar with it, you might go out for a hike or be traveling and come across some pawpaw trees. And you'll often find them sort of in clusters or groves, and most people think that the reason they're clustered in that way is because indigenous people planted them as a source of food and for all those reasons I just talked about. So years and years and years later, we're still finding those clusters kind of in the mix of other trees. The other thing that is interesting about the pawpaw is their pollination. So if you remember, pollination is the mixing of pollen from one flower to another flower and that is what allows a plant to grow its flower into a fruit. So for us to get these delightful pawpaw fruits back in the spring when there were flowers, we needed to do something called hand pollination, because in the wild, pawpaw trees are pollinated by beetles and flies, not really honeybees. They don't like the pawpaw flower, but they will pollinate them. But if you really want to make sure you get a good crop, people will actually use a artist paintbrush, and they will, in the spring when the yellow pollen is there on it's actually sort of a brown maroon colored flower, they will take pollen and get it on the brush from one tree, move to another tree, and deposit it on the interior of those flowers. And that can help increase your harvest, and it makes sure that you get pawpaw fruit and not just a pawpaw tree. Let us know if you've ever tried a pawpaw and what you think of it. We also, in our orchard, I just want to give a quick update about the rest of our orchard. We also right now have Asian pears growing, and we have some apples growing. So we're gonna do a quick look at some of what we have growing, a little bit view of what the orchard looks like right now at the end of August. So I'm gonna do some close-up. All right, so here is our pawpaw tree a little bit closer. So you can actually see how those fruits are growing mixed in with the leaves. I know it can be hard to tell even from just a few feet away. You can see all the leaves, but not how many fruit. So we're gonna get a good harvest this year over the next couple weeks because we can see that it really is full of fruit. In here. And so yeah, you can see sometimes they'll get like a brown spot. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going bad. They just shift colors a little bit as they ripen, but even a fully green one could be ripe, or something like this that's already a little yellow could still be hard. So you just got to make sure you're judging by feel. And then right here we have our Asian pears tree right next to the pawpaws. So I'm gonna get a little closer so you can see some of those Asian pears growing. So the Asian pears are the shape of an apple, but the taste of a pear, and the texture, I would say much more like an apple, nice and crispy and juicy. So we have a lot growing on this tree, which is very exciting. All right, now here's sort of a bigger view of our fruit orchard. Some of the fruit that we already had this year and already are done with are our peaches and our cherry trees, which are over here on this side. But I'm gonna take you through so I can show you what the figs look like. So we've already harvested some figs this year, but we have some growing as sort of a second round of fruit. So that's why none of them are ripe yet. But right here is one of our figs. So you can see I would say this one is full size, but it needs to turn a little bit more yellow and a little bit less green in order to be ripe enough to harvest. Go over here as well. You can see this one right here is a lot smaller, probably still really hard, but it'll get bigger and we'll have more figs to harvest and eat if we can get to them before the birds get to them, because the birds love them. So I'm just gonna walk over here and show you one more spot, which is our apple tree. So our apple tree, unlike the Asian pear tree, unfortunately, isn't full of fruit, but there are some apples that are basically ready. So we got one growing right there, and we got a beautiful one down here as well. So I just wanted to show you those. All right. So that is basically the end of my talk about our orchard and the pawpaw. I just wanted to say that this was our first day doing a Leaf Youth Class Live from Common Good, but we will be doing them every Sunday at 4:30 on all sorts of different topics about what's growing in the garden, food science. We'll probably do some recipes, some cooking demos, and talk about just all sorts of different things. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. And sorry for the interruption right there in the middle. I appreciate all of you who came back on. And hopefully we will see you next week. All right, bye everybody.